Those are the words of an outspoken Bobby Heenan. Billy Robinson, you had to be standing here on the sidelines listening to that rhetoric. What do you make of it?
Yeah. And he was known for being a bully in a situation like that.
Billy Robinson is undoubtedly the most celebrated wrestler to come out of Billy Riley's gym, the Snake Pit in Wigan. Not just an accomplishment, but also an influence. He wrestled the world over, competing against all of the greats of his age in both shoots and works, and then went on to train some of the best to ever do it in both shoots and works.
And when he does, I want to give him the wrestling lesson of his life. And when I finish, Buckwinkle will want to get hold of me.
Both a terror and a delight in the ring, depending on the situation and his esteem of you.
He beat us all up. He did. But I didn't think him being a bully. He just wanted to let us know that he could kick our ass.
And that would be the greatest thing that could happen to me. Heenan, listen, he's such a liar. His dog won't even answer him when he calls.
John, knock both his hands away.
He starred in movies, dined with dignitaries, wrestled in front of tens of thousands, and wrestled in rundown shacks and gravel lots.
Just a little fat manager with a big mouth.
In the name, Billy Robinson commands respect in both show and pro wrestlers alike. And today we discuss the life and influence of Catch Wrestling's premier ambassador, Billy Robinson. Okay, we're here in sunny Calgary, Alberta, Canada. We've got Jimmy on the back. And we've got Javi here beside me. We're here at Catch 22, the podcast about catch wrestling, worked wrestling, where the two intersect. And today, my friends, we're going to talk about the venerable Billy Robinson. Now, Javi, what do you know about Billy Robinson right off the hop? What comes to mind?
The best, most graveliest voice of all time. Listen to that man talk. It's quite something else.
Which is funny because it does have it's not that deep.
No, but it's one of the most, like, it sounds like he's chewing on rocks when he's talking. It's incredible.
I don't know how many times you have to get choked out in your life to get there.
Get
you know what I mean? To have someone just just collapse your Adam's apple 15 times. It's like a cauliflower ear in his throat.
In his throat, yeah. And of course, the other thing is just seeing him, he'd be in his... what was the 70s, walking around with a cane, but as soon as he put his hands on someone, he could still manipulate someone's body in an incredible way, and he would be doing it. Was just wow. Just
Ox strong, an Ox strong fella, for sure.
Yeah,
not a man who was particularly concerned with the aesthetic condition.
No, I don't think so.
But a man who certainly was in this condition. Robinson is known as one of the main, along with Carl Gotch, who we'll talk about another day, kind of ambassadors of catch wrestling at the latter end of the 20th century, coming into the 21st century. And Robinson, I think, more than anyone, is responsible for getting the catch name back out there at a time when it was largely discarded in the world of mixed martial arts and in professional wrestling. Now he had some help with that. Barnett, Jake Shannon, of course, but Robinson was the face.
So hold on. So because it has this, catch wrestling is huge for a while, but then when does it really start to die down a bit? And that's when Billy Robinson's coming in that kind of like 40s, 30s, 40s.
Catch, when wrestling, the more worked wrestling gets, the less important catches, the less represented catches. And the thing is MMA doesn't really start till the 90s.
Yeah.
So from the 30s to the 90s, those catches on a decline, and then it's gone. Right? It's gone for a long time. Right. It's still being used and practiced in certain areas and certain promotions by certain people, but it's often not even called Catch Can anymore.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And Billy Robinson's kind of there for the death knell, and he's there for the rebirth.
So he's one of the meat guys.
He's a catch phoenix.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He's from the ashes.
He's rising from the ashes.
So you could even almost say that the Goldust Trio, even though they use catch wrestling to get as famous as they did, they also kind of killed it to a degree.
Yeah, I would say they killed it
unintentionally.
Yeah, like they would be the four, like the three horsemen of the Catch Apocalypse, because
Apocalypse.
And I don't think a lot of people generally were that upset about it, because what they did in killing it was they made it very profitable and a lot safer.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
They figured out how to really make some money off the marks.
Yeah.
In a much more efficient way than $15 at a time at a carnival. You know what I mean? Or wagers, which is how a lot of catch wrestlers, including Billy Robinson, started making money, was legit matches or very slyly fixed matches with a lot of wagers, side wagers, bets.
And then they get like a certain percentage, or
they would get a cut. Their manager would be betting for them. Their manager would be organizing. Maybe Mom's betting. Maybe Auntie Gladys is betting on you. You know,
so if there's $1,000 that gets bet, they might get a certain just percentage.
Yeah, they'll get their cut because they're the ones who broke their nose or whatever. They've earned it.
Yeah.
Or private fights. They used to have private fights. They used to have garage fights, which was a big kind of underground UK thing. Famously, Dynamite Kid did it after his professional wrestling career was over. Like, all right, we're going to put these two hard men in a garage. We're going to close the door and we're going to open it up.
Half an hour later,
one of them standing and one of them ain't. All right, he gets $1,500 or whatever. You know, a penance for basically being a half a hitman.
like a
you know what I mean?
Match.
So that's kind of the world that the Goldust Trio transforms. And Billy's kind of the last of a dying breed in the sense that he's one of the last guys who can really do both.
Right.
And the thing about Billy is that more than a lot of his other kind of catch contemporaries, Billy is a captivating, charismatic fella. Real good looking fella too in his younger days.
That's swagger, right?
Yeah, big old chin, big old Jay Leno chin, you know. So Billy was born in 1938. So he's born right before the war.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And he's living in Northern England. He's from a family of fighters. His grandfather was a bare knuckle boxing champion in the 19th century. He's got an uncle Alf, who's a boxer and a wrestler. His dad was a lightweight boxing champion. Alfie. Alfred.
right.
Alf. Alien life form.
Yeah, there we go.
You know, Billy Robinson's dad, the Cat Eater.
Cat Eater? That was his fight moniker?
Do you remember Alf?
Oh, fuck. Sorry. That
Cat.
Hey, yes. That's fucking yes. Sorry.
Come on.
I had to go back. I was in the 30s. I had to go back.
You're older than me, man.
I loved Alf. I had the dolls, man. Fuck, he was
I had the doll too. And my buddy had the doll, and his older brother. We used to have like sleepovers, and his older brother would sneak in the room and move the doll around in the night.
Motherfucker.
And then you'd wake up and the doll would be in a different place. One time. Anyway, yeah.
I digress.
So he's from a family of fighters.
Okay.
He's from a hard line. Now, these are all professional men, winning medals, winning championships, fighting for wagers. They still work. You know what I mean? So his family's in the green grocery business.
The green grocery?
Yeah, they're green grocers. So they do produce, canned goods, things like that.
Okay.
Pretty much everything but meat.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
And he's working there as a kid, and he has lots of stories about, you know, throwing big dinners and chasing chickens around and you know, peeling potatoes for hours and hours and hours, which apparently is worse than fighting. It's worse than getting your ass kicked. I don't know how these people think.
Peeled potatoes, man.
It's not that bad.
Taste it all. It's really.
Yeah, I've had both. I know which one I prefer.
Yeah, great.
So he's born a year before the Second World War breaks out. He lives through some bombings. He actually loses 2 brothers to bombings.
Jesus.
So fellas, he doesn't remember them. They die before he's old enough to have any real memory of them at all. And they're quite lucky in a sense where he's not like Billy Riley or a lot of these men who were iron molders and coal miners. They're in the grocery business, but they're tough hombres. You know what I mean? These are guys who know how to fight. And Billy wants to follow in the family footsteps. He wants to be a boxer. So growing up, he wants to be a boxer, but he actually has his like a retina detached.
He's pretty tall too, right?
He's probably 6'1", 6'2".
Yeah, okay.
And he was a sturdy fella.
Yeah.
He would have been a good heavyweight boxer,
he had some
especially when you see him in the 50s and 60s. His build at the time was pretty typical of a heavyweight boxer at the time. But yeah, he's got a detached retina from a childhood accident. And
can't box. There's no way.
Can't box. He won't get licensed. He won't get sanctioned. So he starts wrestling. And you can see it in pictures of him too. You can see he's got a kind of a wonky eye. And there's so many different stories that people tell about giving him this wonky eye. Many wrestlers have claimed to have taken. There's a story that goes around about The Rock's grandfather biting his eye out, which physically, if you've seen a mouth and an orbital bone, not going to happen.
Can't imagine.
Simply not true. And like Billy, the way that the Rock's family kind of tells the story is that Peter bit his eye out, and the way that Billy tells the story is that Peter was a drunken asshole. By the way, this is The Rock's grandfather, High Chief Peter Maivia, who was a pro wrestler and a legitimate high chief in Samoa. And by all accounts, a pretty admirable guy. And him and Billy ended up being friends. But apparently, after a few drinks, like a lot of people, he could get a little carried away. There was
Billy got carried away.
Sorry, Peter got carried away. And there was a bit of a scrap. And the story is actually that Peter bit a chunk out of Billy's cheek. And then Billy knocked him out cold. Is apparently that's the other side of the story. So the eye, not The Rock's grandfather.
Probably.
Maybe don't listen to The Rock.
I like The Rock.
We all like The Rock, but I don't really like The Rock. Yeah,
I think he's the funniest.
He's the funniest dude on the earth.
Yeah. Again, obviously, I've not studied.
I gave him a lot of credence because his father was born down the road from me in Nova Scotia. You know what I mean? So we always took a lot of pride in that, having an Amherst, Nova Scotia boy.
Dad used to play for the Stampede.
No, The Rock played for the Stampede.
Okay.
Yeah, The Rock used to live in 123, which is where I used to consume substances. Legal substances, mostly pizza and whiskey. Yeah, so
okay, so detached retina can't box.
It's going to get into wrestling. So he does a little wrestling training for a while. His dad and his uncle, who are known commodities in the wrestling and boxing world, are taking him to gyms. He's meeting guys like Benny Sherman, who's one of the great American catch wrestlers of the 20th century, Rocky Graziano, Ricky Starr, who's super interesting because Ricky Starr was like a pretty good wrestler, like not anything to write home about, but he was a great like physical specimen, and he was a former ballet dancer, so he became one of the first like kind of flamboyant show wrestlers.
Cool.
Who would do like ballet moves in the middle of a match and really make some of that homophobia money, that early 20th century like prejudice money, which was one of the big ways that wrestling was promoted until like 10 years ago, right? It was just hold on, here's a gay character, or like,
do they actually have gay characters in wrestling?
Oh well, now they actually just have like openly gay guys who wrestle, and it's great, and it's kind of, they're not promoted to be like sissies who need to get their asses kicked. But for so long in wrestling, you would just have like, here's a flamboyant guy, and he's clearly a bad guy because he's not a real man. Like all this awful shit they used to do.
Christ.
You know what I mean? And you watch it, and it's unbearable sometimes to see some of the. But anyway, Ricky Starr was kind of a pioneer for that. So Billy's meeting all these people. He's getting quite good at wrestling, but his dad says, "Listen, if you want to be the best, you're going to have to go to Wigan. You're going to have to go to Riley's gym." So
is he in the UK at this point?
He's not far. He's not far. So I think he's closer to Manchester, but like he's pretty much Lancashire. And it's a Lancashire catch tradition that he's born into as well. Okay. So he's not a stranger to Lancashire. Wigan is not a difficult journey for him.
Okay.
So he starts going there when he's 15, and he's going there at a time where you've got Jack Dempsey, not the boxer, the wrestler, Tommy Moore, Jimmy Niblett, Joe Robinson, no relation. Billy Riley's there training him. All these guys are there training him, wrestling with him. And he stays there till he's 27. So he spends a long time.
That's a rough gym.
Long time training in Wigan.
Jesus.
And he's one of those cats who says, like, him and Carl Gotch are kind of of the mind where it's like, I could have spent longer there. There's so much I didn't learn.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Which is a real testament, because it kind of seems like these guys learned a lot.
Yeah.
They went on and opened their own gyms. They trained so many wrestlers. And he's there 15, 27. He goes in, he's 15, and he's bigger than everybody again. He's a big boy. At 15, he's probably 180, 6'1". You know what I mean? He's a big fella. And, you know, he's just getting humbled over and over again by these old little men.
That's what I was going to say. I think that's the real testament of just what martial arts and are a lot of these harder things. When you're just getting your ass kicked on the regular, regardless of how good you are, I think that it really has that. You end up just really appreciating, always thinking that there's more to learn instead of thinking that you're the man and you know everything when you just get like dummied.
Yeah, you get dummied. And you don't know how, I don't know how I ended up here.
Oh, God.
How did I get on my back?
Yeah. Literally. Like, why am I tap? I know I have to tap. I don't know why.
But I don't know what I'm even in yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he starts to travel. He's going to Germany. He's with Gideon Gita and Bobby Arrow. He's competing in tournaments. He's winning tournaments. He's housing people at the gym.
These would be not direct. Would these be actual catch wrestling tournaments, or
this would be catch wrestling? So this isn't.
Still, yeah.
I'm sure he probably also competed and trained in kind of Greco-Roman or freestyle wrestling. But at this time,
it's still around.
It's kind of all in catch.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's his specialty, and I think Robinson is a lot more dangerous with the. I mean, everybody is, but I would say. More than Greco-Roman, he's a catch wrestler.
Yeah,
okay. I'm sure he has the fundamentals to get through any style of wrestling. But if he's going in and dominating,
it's with Kev. Understood.
And then he's winning, all these different tournaments. He's winning trophies, competitions. You're not making any money. But he's building a name and a reputation. He's meeting lots of people. He's getting to train with the best. And the thing, again, I think we mentioned it with Riley too, is that the Lancashire wrestlers are so good, not just because they're a bunch of hardened coal miners who like to fight for fun, but because of the kind of port culture and the British Empire traveling around, learning different things from different people.
Keep getting this constant influx of different
skills, different tools, different moves. Billy talks about going to India and he would go train with these Palwani and Gusti wrestlers and they'd make him buy a move. So if you said I want to learn this, they'd be like,
under here,
$100. And they'd teach him how to do it, and they wouldn't teach him anything else. You want to learn another move? Here's $100. Before that, his uncles, his father, they probably were just sailors. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were going over there actually wrestling and learning. And then, someone in India got smartened up.
Be like,
how to get some money off these Brits.
Gotta get something out of them.
And around this time, also, Karl Gotch comes over. After the 48 Olympics, Karl Gotch comes over a couple years later. And Karl Gotch is a Greco-Roman champion of, I think he placed 5th in the 48 Olympics, but he's won tons of titles. He's been wrestling at the Hippodrome, which is a big Belgian arena, a sports arena.
This is a big name.
He's a big name, and he's someone who's Karl Gotch is crusty when he's young. You know what I mean? Karl Gotch is not letting you have anything. He's gonna get on the mat, and if you can hang with him, you're learning something. You're always gonna learn something.
He's not always gonna be nice about it, though.
He's not gonna be nice about it. And he's training with Billy Riley, who we talked about before at length. And Billy Riley is not a man who also Billy Riley is a crusty old guy who's not going to be pulling any punches. He's going to be editing your work with a butcher's knife. And in Robinson's book, Physical Chess, Robinson's autobiography made with Jake Shannon, super interesting read. You can sit down and read it in a day, which I did over several pints of Guinness.
Physical Chess? Sorry.
Physical Chess. I had to read it twice, of course, because of the Guinness. But he recalls going and winning a European championship. And Riley's with him as his coach. He's there with him. And this is a shoot, right? This is an actual wrestling tournament. He goes and wins it against some very tough competitors. And Riley, for the first time, says, well, that was good.
Wow.
And Robinson, who's a little emotional, pretty proud of himself. He says, why don't you ever tell me I've done a good job? Why don't you ever tell me I'm excelling? Why don't you ever say I'm any good? And Riley says to him, it's not my job to tell you what's good. It's my job to tell you what's wrong and how to fix it. Once you start to believe you're good, you will stop learning. That's the environment that Billy Robinson's coming from. You know what I mean?
His whole life, and by the sound,
I think probably to a slightly lesser extent went on to propagate that kind of training style of, notorious for smacking you with a cane. You know what I mean? Yeah. In his 70s, he can barely walk. His knees are shot. He's got hip and knee replacements. But like he hits you with a cane and you let him do it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And also around the same time, it actually might even been the same tournament, I think. Riley says, all right, you won the tournament. Great. Why don't you take me out for steak dinner? And Robinson goes, well, Billy, I don't have any money. I can't take you out for a steak dinner. He goes, yeah, you don't have any money. You don't make any money on these tournaments. Trophies and medals, great, don't get you paid. Instead of maybe sticking to more of an Olympic route, focusing more on freestyle wrestling, going and win more championships than that.
More like a gotch.
He goes pro. So when he goes pro, the European wrestling system is a little different than America because, like, Europe is only a little bit bigger than America, the whole continent. Mm-hmm. So American wrestling at the time, show wrestling, worked wrestling, professional wrestling, you can live your whole career in the States, never leave the country, and never work anywhere more than like 2 years at a time, tops. Like 2 years is a good long run. For Europeans, most of their money is made in other parts of Europe or like often in the Empire, like the British Empire. Because wrestling in a lot of these places is done in seasons, right? So it's like
what seasons? Like just like actual like winter seasons, or like because
like wrestling, like sports seasons.
Okay, right.
So like any other sport, they have seasons, and so maybe you work the summer in the UK and you're doing a month in the Butlins, and then you're traveling around the rest of the UK. Maybe you hit Ireland. And then you're going to go do 2 months in France because they're going to hold the tournaments in France in April and May. And then Germany is going to hold theirs in June and July. Okay. And then maybe you've got a month in South Africa and a month in Australia. That's the way that Billy's traveling. That's the way that Billy's learning how to work. So he's going to Sweden. He's going to Australia, South Africa. He's going to India. He's going to Nepal.
And this is all he does. Like at this point, has he had a job? Like has he had to?
I think beyond working for his father as in the grocery business.
No, not really.
No. I don't think he ever spent any time in the mines. You know what I mean? Yeah. He wasn't doing kind of the normal Lancashire thing,
which is incredible. I mean, he was able to use his skills to travel the world doing the shit that he loved
immediately. Which a lot of these guys, someone like Roy Wood still did this. Billy Riley still did do this. Gotch didn't. You know what I mean? This is the first generation of the guys who are really getting out of Wigan. They're going and they're making it work so that they don't have to come back. All these other guys, maybe they go to South Africa to defend the title and learn for like a month. Billy Riley went to America. A lot of accounts say he got dummied. A lot of, came back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Billy's not coming back. Billy's not interested in this. Billy is a wrestler. And he's going... And he's young and he's good looking and he's meeting a lot of people and he's going over there. He has a bit part in King of Kings. So he meets Sophia Loren and Charlton Heston. It's a very big movie. It's a huge film production.
Oh, okay.
And he's over there with small parts in movies. He's going to Spain and hanging out with Ernest Hemingway and going to the bullfights. He actually wrestles at a bullfight. They put a ring up in the intermission.
A person
in the middle,
not a bull.
No, he wrestles it. Yeah, I've heard of wrestling bears. I don't think we've learned how to train. We haven't trained a bull to work yet.
I don't know how trained a bear was. As a kid, but
you can't. First of all, can't get its shoulders to the mat. Doesn't have ankles. Really, you can't.
Problem.
The toe hold's not going to work.
Oh yeah, 100% toe hold.
So yeah, he's meeting dignitaries, maharajas, royalty. He's
top of the game, you would say, in terms of wrestling.
He's getting there. He's top of the game. In Europe, he's definitely a draw and a contender, and he's got legitimate championships, which is always useful everywhere but America, particularly. He does a little bit of carnival wrestling. I think that's pretty short-lived because one of his fellow wrestlers is going out to the bars every night and telling all of the locals that Billy Robinson's running them down. And then they come up, everyone wants to come and beat the shit out of Billy Robinson the next day. So I think that wears on him a little bit. He's having dinner with one of the richest men in the world on a regular basis, and this guy's daughter's following him around, but Billy's kind of like, all right, I know better than this. I'm not doing that. He ends up meeting his first wife, who's an American, and she's come over. 10-pin bowling is just gaining notoriety, like bowling alley bowling.
Okay.
And they're trying to bring it to England.
We're like six.
This would be the late 50s.
Late 50s.
Late 50s, early 60s, this would be happening. So in the early 60s, his wife is coming over from America as kind of an ambassador of bowling to try to introduce bowling to England. And
is bowling a big thing in the UK?
Nowhere near. Like, we kind of laugh at Americans.
You do it for fun.
I think
look to make fun.
Your bowling is darts.
Yeah. But we take darts quite seriously.
You take darts quite, more seriously than we take it. Yeah. But it's a take in the piss sport, though, right? Like, you can't. You want to watch darts sober?
So, not live. Like, the culture is the whole culture is live. People get fucked up, like crazy fucked up. They most recently they just had the World Championship. A huge highlight was someone downed a jug. Like, during the game, the game stopped.
That's the highlight.
Just turn around and just watch the guy down an entire jug. Out of the World Championship.
That's incredible.
Thank God you guys gave us the civilized world, huh? Thank Christ.
So, do you like darts?
I probably love darts.
Okay.
But it's
I love darts.
Totally get why someone would be like, "What the fuck?" But like, again, it's in our culture to take it.
I mean, I think do you know darts for the same reason that I do? Just because bartending at like that 2:30, 3 p.m. There's always darts on that. That's how
I would say that's how I've watched most of my darts. But my dad's a wicked dart player. Oh, I like to play darts, but I like to play darts, drinking beers with my buddies. I'm not good at it, and I thought I was getting good at it, and I didn't go home for like 5 years. I hadn't seen him in ages. This is just after like the COVID restrictions ended, and I was like, "Let's go downstairs. You got a dart, boy?" Like, I played darts in here, so let's go downstairs. So the darts around. I kind of thought I was gonna, I was gonna kick his ass a little bit, and we're playing, like down for 500, whatever you call it, and triples, and he's calling them. I don't call anything. I'm a spray and play dart player. You know what I mean? And he's just, I got pretty disheartened, honestly. I got a little jaded and bitter about it.
Took you down a couple notches, as your parents are supposed to do, I guess.
Yeah. It's very. I need to be humbled from time to time. So his wife's coming over. And bowling. The wrestlers are invited to play these celebrity bowling matches to kick up some interest in it. So he's bowling against the Beatles. The Beatles are this new up and coming Liverpool Northern English group that just got back from Germany and are going to take on the world. And he's here, just throwing pins against Ringo and
I don't know why. That's
John
so funny.
and Paul and George, you know, the Beatles. And that's how he meets his wife. So he meets his American wife. He's starting to travel the world a little bit more, and he starts to go to America through Calgary. So he's brought in to wrestle in Calgary. That's his first excursion to North America to wrestle for Stu Hart, because Stu likes having real wrestlers, because Stu's a real wrestler. From there, he goes over to Hawaii with a guy named Lord Blears, who is another English wrestler, who actually is also Lord Blears is super interesting because he's like a surfing pioneer. And all of his children were professional surfers.
Which the surfing was just beginning started at that time.
Yeah, this would be kind of like the first round of big wave surfers. You know, like the guys riding the giants, the beach hippies, and Lord Blears, who like is a very decorated war hero from the Second World War in the British Navy, ends up becoming like a huge surf pioneer and a big star in Hawaii as a professional wrestler. And he brings Billy Robinson over. From there, Robinson goes to the AWA because he meets, actually in Calgary, he meets Dory Funk Jr.
Yeah, hold on, go back to Calgary for a second. So when he came to Calgary and just like wrestled, just did a couple shows here kind of thing, like won a belt or something?
I don't think he won a belt. I think he was just brought over as kind of an attraction, I think, the first time. Because they used to... Calgary, when the Stampede Wrestling circuit was alive, also kind of ran in a season. They would take most of the summer off, and it would finish up at the Calgary Stampede.
Right.
So every year, the Calgary Stampede, which, if you don't know, the Calgary Stampede is a giant rodeo / fair that has like
festivals.
Yeah, there's a music festival that, you know, Snoop Dogg and Ice Cube are headlining, which is hilarious because you see pictures of the crowd and it's all dudes dressed up like cowboys, and they're doing this, and Cube is spitting some shit, and then you just the cracker ass crowd.
It's Calgary, and they would kind of throw their biggest events of the year during the Stampede. They'd bring in the NWA champion. They'd bring in Andre the Giant. Then they would shut down for 6 to 8 weeks or something. And then get started again in the winter so that everyone could drive on the roads here in the winter, which no one ever got hurt doing that. Very safe.
So then he goes to the AWA. And the AWA is like a really interesting part of American wrestling history. It's run by a former NCAA champion named Vern Gagne, who turned pro, never quite made it politically to the top of the realm. Like he was a perennial contender,
gatekeeper kind of guy.
I think he was being gate kept rather. Like he was a dude who was always almost the NWA champion, but never got to be the world champion for political reasons, basically.
Just wasn't liked enough for something like that, kind of.
Certain people in the NWA had a hold on it.
Okay.
And they weren't going to give it up.
Sure.
A man named Lou Thez, particularly.
What does AWA stand for?
American Wrestling Association.
That makes sense.
So he starts the American Wrestling Association basically to get out from under the thumb of the NWA, the National Wrestling Association, which is the governing body for the entirety of pro wrestling at the time in America. He just starts his own, so he can be his own world champion. He just puts himself over. He's the world champ now. Here you go. Yeah. Not that weird, especially from a business standpoint, because like, well, you can't trust anybody. So now I'm the champ because I can't. Now my kid's the champ because I can't trust anybody else to do it.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Fascinating.
And it's a huge territory. The AWA is based in Minneapolis.
Okay.
But it goes at different points all the way down to San Francisco or Vegas.
Jesus.
And it's going up into Manitoba and Saskatchewan. It's got Chicago.
Jesus.
It's a huge territory. And it's a real mix of gimmicks and kind of legitimate wrestling pros. So they would have like really big stars like Mad Dog Vachon, who was a legitimate wrestling pro, but was way more of a character even as a champion wrestler. French Canadian, stupid hair, short, stocky, terrifying man. Or the Crusher, who like the Crusher and Dick the Bruiser, these former football players, just barrel chested shit talkers. But then you had to have guys like Vern or a guy named Nick Bockwinkel, who was a hell of a talent. Or you bring in a Billy Robinson so that you can have some legitimate looking wrestling on top of the card for the championship. And then maybe the tag team champions are on the Bruiser and the Crusher. And they still get to be champions, but like they've got about a 7-minute match in them before they're blown up and you realize how bad it looks.
Right.
They're charismatic guys.
They get, as Jimmy was saying, like there's some people are better on the mic and some people are better in the ring, kind of thing, right? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, these are guys who really draw you into the building, like Goldberg. If anyone's ever seen Goldberg wrestle, you don't want to see a 15-minute Goldberg match, let alone an hour like Vern and Billy would do every night, right? They would go out and do an hour, usually a draw.
Yeah.
So you bring in someone like Billy, a mechanic, a legit pro wrestler, to add legitimacy and to keep the matches good. Because you can't, you gotta have a good match.
Right.
You can't just have a full card of
work.
You know, steroid dudes or whatever.
Right.
It gets quite boring quite quickly. And Vern's, you know, he's a decent pay guy. He's not a great pay guy. But his payouts aren't good. Because wrestlers get paid on whim, right? Like there's a technical, maybe the world champion knows exactly what the gate was and he gets his 10%, but generally
you get what you get.
You're at the whims of the promoter. Fern was okay. There was a lot of money to be made, so you still made decent money. Despite the size of the territory, the travel wasn't that bad because they didn't work every night. But Vern himself was like an egotistical bastard by all accounts, who like wouldn't change and was pretty difficult to deal with. But Billy got a lot out of him, including helping him run his wrestling school, where he trained like the Iron Sheik and Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat, some of the biggest names in pro wrestling, were helped train by Billy Robinson because they went to Vern Gagne's training school. Ken Patera, who was an Olympic strongman, Brad Rangans, who was like a terror, a dangerous Olympic wrestler.
And is this where Robinson starts to become a bit more of that coach? Because as much as I know him as a great wrestler, I mean, I think he's more known
his influence is more as a coach.
Yeah.
This would be about the time that he starts coaching.
Okay.
I think he probably helped at Riley's gym. There's video footage of him kind of helping around Riley's gym when he's in England. He actually goes back to England in the 70s for a time and starts his own gym where he teaches like Marty Jones. I think he trained Johnny Saint. These are great, like English professional wrestlers who were more show wrestlers, but you know, they had some gas in the tank for sure.
So he was teaching both. He was teaching both the full catch and a bit of the show.
I would say the money was in show. Okay. And especially in America, he's teaching show.
Okay.
I'm sure, you know, he's showing them some tricks, but by all accounts, he was also like, not to the same lengths that someone like maybe Karl Gotch was. But Billy would come in and assert dominance. So he would he'd come in and hurt people. You know what I mean? And he like a lot. The thing about these guys is they get a really bad reputation a lot of the time because they'll take advantage of you, right? Like, and I think it's fair to say that Billy would always do business in the ring, which not a lot of his contemporaries of the same skill would do. But Billy like just didn't really respect people that couldn't go.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? Like I feel like if you couldn't really wrestle a little, you didn't have to be as good as him, but if you couldn't really wrestle,
he's just not going to bother.
He wasn't particularly kind.
He's going to make you leave.
He was going to make you leave. Another thing that Vern actually does too is Vern produces a movie about wrestling that he stars in with Ed Asner, who was a B-level actor at this point in the early 70s, but like a known star, a big television star, Ed Asner.
Okay.
And he makes a film about wrestling, and
like a documentary or
no,
more
like a movie, like a scripted movie. I own it on DVD. It's not good, but it's fun. If you're like a big wrestling nerd, it is a worthwhile watch just to see all, because Dusty Rhodes is in it. All sorts of like wrestlers in their younger kind of period who would go on to be really big stars in the 80s are in it. And Vern kind of plays the main good guy, the protagonist, the baby face, and his foil is Billy Robinson.
Oh,
so Billy's got like a pretty high level little feature film there.
All right.
So movie star.
Making it work.
In wrestling, that makes you a movie star. A-lister. But eventually he gets pretty sick of that shit, right? So he starts making more frequent trips to Japan. Japan is where he kind of makes his real name as far as legacy. He's been a star everywhere he's gone.
Yeah.
He's been
he's been the man.
He's been booked strong. If he's not the champ, he's a contender, right? He's a challenger.
Right. Yeah.
And they want these legitimate guys in Japan. We talked last week about like the way that Japanese wrestling really loves legitimacy, even at its
people that
at its most worked, they still crave legitimacy. And they always they had a lot of shit to prove, especially kind of to the West in this post-World War II, post-A-bomb kind of world. You know what I mean?
So the organizations that the Japanese were putting together, I mean, they liked the work, they really liked the pro wrestling, but they wanted it to, they wanted some authenticity. They wanted it to be kind of fairly badass.
They wanted to make sure everybody knew they were the toughest. They wanted to represent Japan in this thing. And they had, the great thing about it is they had no problem being like, well, we learned from the best in England. It didn't have to be we learned from the best in Japan. We can learn from the best in England, but we're the best now. So they got to bring the best over from England.
In a bunch of different things, yeah.
World
War II, they were great about that. We're going to take whatever the hell.
Well, that's how they became the third strongest economy in the world 20 years after they lost the most horrific ending of a war you can imagine.
Yeah. Crazy.
So Japan's kind of this weird thing where there's, Ricky Dozan starts this promotion. We talked about Ricky Dozan last week, the guy who kind of blindsided Kimura and beat him up in a stadium, and
right.
And people loved him for it. He's got his kind of guys that he's training up to be the heir apparent, but he's also working with the Yakuza.
Jesus.
He gets stabbed in a nightclub and dies by a Yakuza member, and he leaves behind Toyonobori, Giant Baba, and Antonio Inoki. And then there's all this dissension. Giant Baba and Inoki stay with JWA, which Ricky Dozan started, the original promotion. Toyonobori starts the IWE, and the JWA has Karl Gotch.
JWA, the Japanese
Wrestling
Association? Okay.
Has Karl Gotch there as the resident baddest man on the planet, English catch wrestling champion.
Yeah.
He's Belgian German, but whatever. He trained in him. It counts. So they want someone to come into this new promotion and kind of fill that role.
Of course.
So that's got to be Robinson. And Robinson claims that they didn't really know that Robinson and Gotch were like old buddies who used to like Gotch used to go over to the Robinson house for dinner and stuff on Sundays. You know what I mean? They don't know this, but that seems pretty unlikely to me. And he goes over for the IWE and starts making a huge reputation in Japan, along with other guys like Gotch, Gordienko, all these other great Western catch wrestlers, going over there, making a name for themselves. And he's like a big attraction there pretty immediately. And even after he leaves, for the first time, of course, because he comes back several times, his legend lives on. He starts, again, there's characters based after him in Saturday morning cartoons. You know what I mean? Robin Mask.
Jesus.
Tiger Mask, Arch Nemesis, Robin Mask. He's running main events. He's winning tournaments. He's winning championships. He's a big star. But his wife is American. His kids are in America. He goes back to America. Things start to go wrong when he goes back to America.
And again, now we're talking
mid to late 70s.
70s now, yeah.
He's having problems with his hips and knees. He's his first marriage disintegrates. His skills as a professional wrestler are starting. He's got the wrong skill set now.
What do you mean? Because he's
being legitimate's counting less and less.
Oh,
maybe you don't
on the show.
Yeah, you don't need this legitimate guy anymore. They're not drawing any money.
Oh,
you know, a former football player is going to draw you more money.
Okay.
You know what I mean? A dude with a good body and a great tan is going to draw you more money than Billy, who's putting on the pounds. He's got that sideways eye. He's not a great interview. For a Wigan guy, he's Ric Flair. You know what I mean? He's the most charismatic Wigan guy you could imagine. But he's not Ric Flair. You know, he's not lighting the studio on fire. He's not Tommy Rich. So things are kind of going bad. He ends up getting out of wrestling. He's in such bad shape. He's so out of demand. He's in Vegas as a security guard. He's running a gas station at one point. He's just the manager of a gas station.
From like dining with dignitaries to
running, which is really, it's such a sad thing in wrestling about like there's certain things they say in wrestling, you know, it's not what you make, it's what you save, or like the only thing that's real is the money and the miles. These are like classic wrestling
right
kind of mottos. There's a guy named Bad News Allen who wrestled in the WWF as Bad News Brown. He's from Harlem. His name is Alan Coage. He was a bronze medal Olympic judoka, who turned to pro wrestling because of the incredible amount of racism. He was an African American, and like the amount of racial gatekeeping and like internal politics in the judo world. Like he had to sue some governing body to get into the Olympics when he went, because he was being held out, and like mostly that was a racial thing, right? He also is notorious as a man who one time Andre the Giant called him the N-word on they used to have these like buses they would hire for all the foreign talent in Japan.
Yeah.
And Andre said some shit to him, and he made the bus driver pull over. He got out of the bus and demanded Andre apologize or fight him before they went any further. And Andre apologized. Andre the Giant was not going to try with Bad News Allen.
Damn.
Bad News Allen at one point after a run in the WWF in the late 80s with Hulk Hogan, where you can make crazy money, was a security guard at a mall in Airdrie.
Airdrie?
Yeah, well, he worked in Calgary in the 80s and kind of took a shine to it and loved Calgary and ended up living here. And he died at Rocky View Hospital.
Calgary is my favorite city I've ever lived in.
Calgary's
fantastic.
God love.
Hey, be quiet, you.
What?
Jimmy loves Calgary. I'm the one who doesn't like Calgary.
That's true. He talks shit constantly.
I left London.
We need a new premium.
I told everyone London was the best city in the world. I still left it.
So we're here. There you go, man. That's yeah.
I keep complaining, but I ain't left yet.
He just likes to complain.
I just love to complain. So saving money, doesn't seem to work, and it's built against you, right? Especially for someone like Robinson. Robinson's a drinker, and Robinson's a drinker his whole life. Like there's stories Jake Shannon tells about, like, oh yeah, Robinson had like 8 or 10 jacks. And then we went to grapple.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I've never seen him drink water. He drank coffee until it was whiskey time, you know? So these guys, they're living life hard, and it's not cheap. And you got to think of like, okay, they make all this money, right?
But they're traveling constantly, staying in hotels.
They pay for all of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're paying their hotel. They're paying their trans. They're paying everything. What you come home with at the end of the day is not the same as what's handed to you in that white envelope at the end of the night.
Yeah.
So he's doing all these kind of odd jobs. His life's falling apart. And luckily, he gets invited back to Japan. Because at this time, Japan is going through the catch wrestling renaissance that they don't call a catch wrestling renaissance. But this is the time of the offshoot shoot style promotions, the UWFs, Shudo, UWFI, Fighting Network Rings, Valley Tudo Japan, Pancrase. This is the time where all these things are starting to kind of bubble up. The volcano's rumbling. The lava's not out yet.
80, like this is
early 80s to mid 80s.
Yeah.
And Robinson is remembered as a legit badass. He's remembered as a guy who had already been training people, had already put on these great matches, had the titles, had the appearance in anime, had all this cachet, and all these guys too. I don't know about Billy for sure, but like the merchandising, that professional wrestling went through, these guys were advertising for Nokia, for major companies. Right. These guys would, all of these American wrestlers would go in and cut records all the time. You can go find like records of Terry Funk singing Japanese, or English ballads. It's god awful. Like, you didn't have to sing at all. Like, most of them just kind of talked through it. But like, they were huge celebrities. They drew crazy ratings on TV. They were cultural figures. So everybody remembers Billy Robinson. He was one of the first guys to wrestle Antonio Inoki on a big stage. And his matches with Inoki are still things that like you should watch in wrestling school. They're great matches. They're from the early 70s.
Why do I know that name?
Antonio Inoki?
Yeah. We definitely sounds familiar, but I can't.
We've talked about him earlier. He's the guy who fought Muhammad Ali in that embarrassing debacle we're going to talk about one day.
Right.
And he is a huge figure, a looming figure in Japan.
And he's a huge man, right? He's a big
like 6'2" guy.
Yeah.
His partner, Giant Shohei Baba, was he was like 6'8". Okay. Inoki was a big guy, especially by like Japanese standards in the 60s and 70s. And tall, 6'1", 6'2".
Yeah, that's tough.
One of the most ridiculously large jaws you'll ever see. We're gonna have to get a photo of that up, Jimmy, because it's fucking weird looking. All this stuff. Oh man, what I'd do for a chin, almost as much as I do for another like 4 inches in my legs. If I was 6 feet tall, I'd be prime minister now. So he's kind of brought over here at first as, we want to bring you over for a couple weeks. Mm-hmm. We'll put you up, we'll pay you, bring you to Japan. And then he becomes a figurehead for the UWFI. And then they bring him over full time, and he works and lives in Japan for many years in his later age, training up these shoot fighters, these pro wrestlers who are becoming shoot fighters at the time that the UFC and Pride and all these new mixed martial arts promotions are beginning. Mm-hmm. And he's meeting and working with a lot of like Gotcha's students, because Gotcha's students are the ones who are really paving the way for MMA. Like Gotcha's students, because Gotch stays in Japan. He doesn't go back to America, and he marries a Japanese woman, and he stays in Japan for quite a long time before he retires to Florida. So he's training Sakuraba, Suzuki, Fujiwara, Funaki, Shigeo Miyato, Nobuhiko Takada, Akira Maeda. He's training all these guys who go on to found mixed martial arts in Japan.
Yeah.
And now he's working with these guys, the Snake Pit Japan guys like Shigeo Miyato. And he's getting up there. He saved a little bit of money. It's time to go back to America. And he's kind of starting to fall into obscurity again. Because he's not talked about. And there's certain things, Karl Gotch especially talks about this, where they talk about the way that like the Japanese culture, like there's an incredible reverence for you while they need something from you, but once they've gotten it from you, they discard you.
Well, and in general, trainers, I mean, poor trainers and coaches, they generally don't get a lot of, like, even think about, like, Firas Zahabi, GSP's coach, you know, one of the best coaches out there, but just no one know him looking to walk down the street, you know?
Yeah. And Billy, especially the older Billy gets, he's not an assuming fella. You know what I mean? He's always very clean cut. He's got the off eye. He's very heavy set the older he gets.
Yeah,
he's really, because his mobility is hard. And another thing that happens, I think, with a lot of athletes who kind of stop being athletes, particularly wrestlers, is that when they're in shape, when they're in working shape, the amount of calories they can consume in a day is ridiculous. Well, you don't just like stop wanting to eat 6 meals a day because you're not working it off.
Yeah.
So a lot of these guys get quite big if they don't keep up the conditioning. And a lot of them don't keep up the conditioning because they physically aren't capable of it. You know, your knees and your hips, you're not going to be getting your 10,000 steps a day, you know? But there is a guy who comes around, Jake Shannon, who we're going to talk about a lot in the podcast. I'm not going to do a Jake Shannon, episode by any means, but Jake Shannon comes up a lot because he's a dude who really has been fighting to keep Catch alive for the last 20 years.
Is he the guy who's written like 20 some odd books on the thing?
Probably. I know I've got a couple of his books.
Okay.
He helped Robinson write his autobiography.
Yeah.
He's got he's a bit of a, like, I don't want to call him a huckster. He's a industrious fella. You know, he invented an exercise, a piece of exercise equipment. He's always writing books. He hosts several podcasts.
Okay.
He's got a political podcast. He's got all these things. He's on everybody's podcast. He's always traveling around, hosting seminars, attending seminars. He's definitely like he's a mover and a shaker for sure. And he's obsessed with catch wrestling. And I don't know how he is as a person, but I got to appreciate that because I'm kind of obsessed with catch wrestling.
As you know.
So you got to give Jake Shannon a lot of credit for coming in and kind of revitalizing the career of Billy in his later years and bringing him around gyms all across the world, bringing him back to England. And there's, you know, you can find video footage of Robinson returning to England and teaching these young wrestlers in Wigan catch holds, and then being like, wow, that was really effective. That's crazy. Going back to Japan, helping him write the book, and also hooking him up with some like kind of more current names, guys like Josh Burnett, Carol Burnett. He trained Carol Burnett.
She has a vicious left.
Oh, the bad motherfucker. Eric Paulson, some pro wrestlers, like a young fella named Jack Gallagher, who's been kind of officially canceled, but he competed in MMA and pro wrestling, and he was pretty good at it. Harry Smith, who was the British Bulldog's son, who is a catch. I don't know if he ever won like any of the new catch tournaments, but he's been a top contender in them, and is a big strong boy for sure. In 2001, he moves to Arkansas, and from there on, he's just doing the traveling seminars. His home base is Arkansas. He's not going to be going back to Japan for another 5 years to train all these guys.
Sure.
His family's there. He's got a son in the military, in the American military, and he kind of quietly finishes his life in America, writing his autobiography, making instructional videos, doing the odd seminar here and there. He dies in 2014 at 75, but he leaves behind him like an incredible legacy. He leaves behind a legacy of keeping a sport alive that almost died. It's like he saved a language. There's a great music artist from New Brunswick, Jeremy Dutcher, who was an opera singer. he sang opera with a very good friend of mine for years. I used to see him perform when I was in high school. I'd go see him.
Was that your chick you most told me about? That?
Yeah, a good friend of mine who sings opera. That chick.
Sorry.
And he ended up making records, and he's indigenous, and he basically revived a not dead but very much dying language, and started making these kind of ethereal. They're not pop records, but these ethereal kind of avant-garde records using this dying language, and I think has done a lot in the way of kind of promoting the idea of keeping this language alive. Kneecap in Ireland is doing the same thing with Irish Gaelic, where they're rapping in traditional Irish, and it's actually helping to revitalize the study of the language and people learning and using the language. And that's kind of what Billy Robinson is doing with Catch Wrestling, and he's not alone, but he's one of like 5.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
A real pillar. Like if it wasn't for him,
it's like him and Carl. Yeah. And this is like at this point, Roy Wood and Wigan, the man who's running the Wigan Snake Pit, has abandoned it. Yeah, and hasn't come back to it yet.
Yeah, he comes back.
He comes back to it eventually, but he comes back to it about the same time that Billy passes away, and he leaves a legacy of students. Whether it's pro wrestling, I mentioned the Iron Sheik and Ric Flair, Brad Rangans, Marty Jones, and also legitimate fighters, Barnett and Tamura. He's training so many huge names, and beyond that, he's influencing and inspiring people to get into this dying art. And I think what's really interesting about Billy that a lot of the contemporaries of his don't also have is that Billy could do the pro wrestling really well. Whereas like Karl Gotch's pro wrestling really only worked in Japan. Because of the style of Japanese wrestling, the strong style, the hard hitting, no nonsense style of Japan. Billy could adapt and get over anywhere. Billy was so over in India and Nepal. I mean, in Nepal, he's hanging out with royalty. It's like he's going to dinner with Elon Musk and Prince Charles. You know what I mean? Like he's hanging out with the most influential people in this. There's a great story about like him running into a panther. Someone had half domesticated a panther in Nepal, and they like tricked Billy into coming into it, and he's in his early 20s, and he says it's the first time he ever felt fear because this priest that he's hanging out with, who's living in Nepal, living the high life, or no, a professor, kind of tricks him into walking into the line of this panther, and he's like, just give him that piece of meat I got over there, just get it to him, it'll be fine. I got like,
those are terrifying.
He's living a life of like a Forrest Gump kind of life. Yeah. You know what I mean? He's meeting the movie stars. He's getting bit roles. He's meeting dignitaries, celebrities. He's hanging out with Ernest Hemingway.
And he's doing this by throwing large men around.
And he's doing this by, traveling the world, just getting abused. Just taking falls and making people take falls. And also along the way, he gets to hang out with Dara Singh. So I think Billy Robinson's one of the most interesting men in all of wrestling. Like, work, shoot, doesn't matter. I think he's an extremely captivating fella and a great ambassador to Catch, along with a fella named Karl Gotch. And on our next episode, we're going to get into Billy's contemporary, maybe the main rival for Catch's god, the god of wrestling, Karl Gotch. Thanks, guys.
Till then.
All right. Well, since